The STC South Central Texas chapter held its annual mini-conference online in April 2020. We had 32 attendees, along with 5 presenters and 4 moderators. Jose Valdez began our mini-conference with his presentation, Single Sourcing with Microsoft Word. There, he showed us how to use Word to carry out some fairly complex functions when managing content in multiple documents.
How often it is that I've told people about single sourcing in Word, and they said, "Nah, you can't do that. Word doesn't do that." And it's like, yes, it does. I do it every day. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't recognize that Word is a powerful program since they've only used Word for very simple things. They don't realize that it is, since that you can do very sophisticated things with it. It is an open development platform. If you want to start writing scripts and what have you with Microsoft Word, you don't have to buy a developer kit. You can actually get started and do these things yourself. What I really love about single sourcing is that we're all writers here. When we are in our zone, when life is good, we get to hone our prose and polish our prose and get it into the form that we like the most. So once you do that, if you're single sourcing, you can in fact get all of your, you can get the best version of your prose and distribute it to everywhere where it's appropriate. Okay, so we have 2 documents side by side here. For the sake of demonstrations, it's just one document. I mean, we are just looking at 2 documents, but you could be linking to 4 documents, 40, 400, however many documents you have the time and strength and dedication to maintain. You will notice that on this side, this paragraph and this paragraph are identical, even though we're in 2 separate documents. This version of this version of the paragraph is gray, and that is because it is a field. So anyway, let's make a little change here. Okay, so let's really get the user, call the user an idiot, a fool. Idiot, fool, keep away from moving parts. That'll do it, hopefully. So now let's go to this side. And I clicked inside of the field and I hit F9. And my change has now been propagated to this other document. You make the change once, and eventually all of the fields get updated. Cool. Right now we are going to mess around with custom document properties. That is one way of achieving of creating a variable in your document. So, oops, I just made a mistake, and it's a fun thing to point out. I edited the include text field, which is something that's quite natural. You see the field and you want to edit it, but here's what happens. When I update the field, the picture comes back. You have to delete if you want to change it, you have to change it in the source. Okay, so let's talk about creating a custom document variable. I'm going to delete insults. Maybe insulting the user is not a good choice. Let's include the product name here. When working with the blank product. Okay, so I'm going to replace this with something that's called a custom document variable. I'm sorry, a custom document property. So let's go to, I went to the File menu, go to Info, and we are going to Properties now. And so now let's go back to our document. All right, so I'm going to replace the word blank with control. Let's hit control F9. Control F9 gives us our curly braces. And I'm going to this is a doc property field, not include text. It's called doc property. And the one we just created is called product. Okay, so this is the rubber ducky product.
In her presentation, Build a Better Checklist for Your Communications Tasks, Kelly Schrank discussed using checklists to manage various communications tasks, from editing to tracking progress.
It covers checklists as people use them in the workplace, which is what I'll be talking about. And lucky you, my discussion will be specific to tasks that you're likely to do as technical communicators. I highly recommend this book. It's a fun read, very engaging, with a running story about how the use of checklists saves lives in operating rooms, and many interesting ventures into research about how other industries use checklists. It's the closest thing I can find to an academic piece on using checklists. One thing I want to mention up front from the book, Gwen talks about how people think using a checklist is beneath them. They're too smart for that. They don't need it. So let me offer this. Maybe you don't need a checklist on your good days at work, when you've gotten enough sleep. You have no worries occupying your mind. You have no interruptions, and you're in a great mood. But what about those days when there's a pandemic, when any and all of those things could be happening, when you could be totally off your game, and there's really not a lot you can do about it? The checklist is there for you to make you your better self every day. The quote on the slide is from a psychotherapist and a psychiatrist, and this goes back to the use of checklists as memory tools. So the question becomes, do you want to spend your, I'll put it in air quotes, brain energy, trying to remember something simple, like the next step in a process in a system that's not intuitive, or a style for a second level heading in a document you're editing? Or do you want to let the checklist handle that? Let the checklist remember things for you, so you can use your brain energy to analyze data or to rewrite the text for a tough concept. I advocate for a special kind of comprehensive checklist just for your use. So this isn't something that you could, find at a book somewhere. You have to make it yourself. So I like to talk about checklists for writing and editing tasks, just the type of stuff we do, because I've experienced the benefits of a good checklist firsthand and with the team I used to manage. But I have particular requirements for good checklists. We'll discuss them in greater depth in the rest of this session. Because I have presented this topic in different formats and I've been asked to make the connection more clear, I want to make sure I tie the reasons for using a checklist directly to the point of the talk. How do they make you more efficient? How do they make you more consistent? And my answer is that going through the process of establishing what needs to be done, task for optimal efficiency, and being able to follow a set list of items that I check off as I go has allowed me to be more efficient and more consistent in my editing, writing, and communications tasks. As an editor especially, or even as a writer who's editing yourself, the ability to be consistent in formatting and style and wording has been invaluable. But I think it's helpful for many other tasks, other types of tasks as well. The checklist keeps me on task. It allows me to stop and start back up with a lot less lack of focus and certainly less worry. It allows me to track metrics and accurately estimate future projects. It's a nice motivational tool too. You get to see your progress as you go, and if you do have good metrics, you'll be able to better estimate how much longer the task will take by where you are in the checklist. Because I have a lot to do in too little time, like many of you, because I do value quality and consistency in the materials I edit and write, like many of you, I like knowing I've done my best, and the checklist documents all of that. So how do you go about getting started and creating a comprehensive checklist? Here's a roadmap of what we're going to cover. The bulk of the session is going to be how do you create a comprehensive checklist for use with communication tasks at work. Though it may seem like a lot of tasks, a lot of steps, some of them are simple. You can see that already. The hard ones, well, doing the hard work in those steps is usually where you get the most benefit from the checklist. So for the right task, the benefits are more than worth the work. So how do you know when you have good checklists? The title of my talk doesn't mention peace of mind, but picking up where you left off with confidence is sometimes priceless, especially in this day and age. There are always interruptions, there's always distractions, you're definitely going to have an off day. I'm an experienced professional. I know what to do when I get a project for the most part. But as an experienced professional who's good at what I do, like many of you, I also end up with a lot of projects. So in my last full-time position, I had many different types of projects, different clients, different systems, different types of work. Having a checklist for many of the tasks helped me keep them all straight and know where I am with any of them at any one time.
In his presentation, Cognitive Aspects of Usability, Design, and Content, Kirksey Amont examined cognitive aspects affecting how persons perceive, understand, and use informational and instructional materials in various settings.
None of us intuitively knows how to use a pen. Rather, what we do is in the course of our lives, we observe how other people use it, or individuals instruct us in how to use it to perform different processes. We might be taught that a pen is something that is used for writing, and we will teach you how to use that pen to create letters and combine them into words on a page. So this is learned associated function. In other cases, we might have begun to figure out that if we scribble and scrawl things, we can draw images with this pen. And in other cases, people might say, that's pretty good. Let me show you some techniques on how to refine what you're doing randomly there to make it more recognizable as art. So with things like art, you've got this mixed approach where it is both learned and acquired behavior. You kind of notice, try by doing, and other people instruct you into it. And then we have completely observed or completely acquired behavior where we watch other people use pens repeatedly in certain contexts to sign receipts when you check into hotels, to sign receipts when you go to restaurants, to sign receipts when you purchase something. And based upon seeing that, we begin to model the behavior. I've seen people do this, I know I can do this, but this is how we learn to use things. So the second rule is nothing is inherently usable. And if we have to be either formally instructed or passively observe over time how to use things. But the key question becomes which use? Because in any possible setting, you could perform any of these features. How do we know the specific use of this object at this time? But once we know it, the brain kicks into autopilot. I know where I am. I know what will be there that I need to use to perform a process. I know what I will be expected to do or how I expect to use that object in that space to perform that process. I perform reflexively. It's a cascading effect. One prototype opens another prototype, opens another. Prototype of place opens prototype of objects I expect to be there, opens prototype for activity I expect to perform with object. This series is called a cascading prototype. And this is how our brain performs a huge number of activities, seemingly reflexively. We kick into autopilot the moment we recognize something, access what we expect it to look at its potential functions, figure out what space it's in, access how to use it in that space, and everything simply slides in, all at the subconscious level. But this reflexive process is why usability can break down if any part of that cascade is broken. If I don't know where I am because I can't recognize the space, if I don't know what something is because I can't recognize it, I can't use something, I can't engage in a process because I'm totally lost. They don't just apply to physical spaces, they apply to metaphysical as well. They affect how we use printed documents. And when you think about it, when we talk about written texts, we speak about them like spaces. What is going on in the story? What is going on in the text? We speak about it as though it's a location. Because as far as our mind is concerned, it is. Whenever you read a text, you create mental images or sensory images of what you think is going on in a space there. And it's the same thing with the text. Now, what's weird about that is in this space, we expect there to be certain objects designed a certain way to perform a process. Many of us expect if it's a technical manual, it will have a table of contents. We expect that item to be there, and we know how to use it to locate information in a text. If it's not, we get very upset or very confused. Same thing applies to digital spaces, like interfaces. We have a mobile phone, we have a website, we have a piece of software. It is treated in our mind like a space. We expect that space to have certain tools, items, objects in it that we use. We need to be able to recognize those objects readily to perform a process in a space. I expect every mobile phone to have an app that lets me call other mobile phones or other phone lines. That's a given. It's part of the prototype for mobile phone space. I expect that mobile phone app to look a specific way. And while many of us have probably not used an analog phone, and some of us never seen an analog phone, we recognize this symbol for some reason as call phone. We know what it is, we know how to use it. So this is how these deep-seated expectations of space plus stuff we expect to find there and how to use it, how they drive our usability expectations.
In his presentation, Jack Molisani not only discussed the top 10 mistakes content professionals make when looking for work, he also shared tips on avoiding these mistakes.
Don't insult the recruiter. I'm not kidding. It happens, and I'm going to share an email with you. Just read this real quick. If I do business with you, it cannot be your job to interpret my resume or discern if I qualify for a job or where I ask you to send the resume. I don't have time to explain or tutor you the things that I know in relation to a client's job description. You'd be getting in the way and wasting time. Also, educated writers are not limited by their education or experience about what they start to write. You might be referring to the new age dumbdowns, the itsy bitsy poos of the writing world, called word processing people who pretend to be technical writers. I come along and have to clean up their blankety blank text. Their being able to use a piece of software as an expert is not the same as being educated. It seems like by your name, me, foreign born, your writing ability, and writing comprehension, you have trouble with the English language and its semantics. What? And you want me to find you a job? Yeah, don't do that. Cover letters are the worst, especially when, oh, dear honorable person looking for a company that will nurture me and give me the opportunity to spread my wings, blah, 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 blah. No, we don't want to care what you're looking for. What we want to know is how do you match what we're looking for, right? So a perfect cover letter is, dear company, I'm applying for job 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's a summary of how my experience matches the job requirements. You want 5 years experience as a tech writer? I have 10. You want experience doing conditional text? I've taught conditional text at the STC level. You want to do a degree in an applicable field? My degree is in nuclear physics. I'm available at this phone number for an interview. Sincerely, me. Done. Simple. Now, this next thing is kind of a subset. Don't use odd email addresses. joejones@gmail.com is far more professional than happybuzzed@sugarjunkie.org. And lest you think that I am making this up, I'm going to share some actual email addresses that people have used to apply for jobs. I rearranged them so they're not, actual emails for privacy's sake. No mango for you at hotmail.com. Okay 53. Antlers@mrmoose.org. Kayakboy11. But I like this one, addicted to coffee at AOL. And a couple things down is realcranky@yahoo.com. First of all, who would hire somebody whose email address is realcranky? And secondly, just out of fun, I want to put Real Cranky and Addicted to Coffee in the same room at the same time just to see what would happen. I submitted a programmer once, and the hiring manager came back to me because she had typos in her resume. And he said, listen, if she can't write 2 pages of error-free resume, how can I expect her to write 10,000 lines of error-free code? There was a job that required experience doing conditional text in FrameMaker. That's when you use a variable and say, okay, we're printing this for, like, some of the cars are branded, like the Probe and the Mazda 626 was actually the same car, just sold by different companies. So you could just change that conditional text to say either Mazda or Ford. So they want her to have experience with conditional text. So she got a copy of FrameMaker, how to do conditional text, and then called her STC buddies and said, hey, if they're in conditional text, meet me on Saturday morning. Bring your laptop. So they did. She got the interview, and when the hiring manager says, Do you know how to do conditional text? She goes, know how to do conditional text. I forgot how to do conditional text, right? And she got the job. Now, she didn't say she's got 10 years experience doing it, but she knew how to do it, and that was sufficient for the job. So whatever industry you're in, whatever tools that are being used in your area, and the easy way to do this is do a job search on like Indeed or Dice or Monster for tech writers in your area, and look at the job requirements and see if there's a tool that's coming up over and over again.
Sri Spangler concluded our virtual mini-conference with her presentation, Volunteer to Prevent Burnout, by sharing how volunteering can provide balance when dealing with the ever-changing nature of our profession.
If you've been spinning your wheels, just trying every good practice in the book, and you still feel like you're struggling with feelings of burnout, I'm going to suggest that you try volunteering. Winston Churchill said, you make a living by what you get, you make a life by what you give. And so far, I have found this adage to be true, at least for me. To prevent or remedy stress and burnout at work or in your professional or your personal life, invest in your community and yourself by volunteering. Because believe it or not, volunteering is not solely a selfless act. You reap the benefits of volunteering tenfold. And to be honest, there's nothing wrong with being a little selfish when it comes to staying sane in this world, especially now. Simply volunteering a bit of your time seems like a fix too good to be true. And it may not work the same way for every single person, but I have yet to meet a regular volunteer who regrets doing it or says it doesn't help them in some way. So I know you're probably all wondering, how can volunteering actually help me with these feelings of burnout, disillusionment, disenchantment, feeling stuck? Gandhi said the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Based on my experience volunteering the last several years, this definitely rings true for me. When I felt lost, it really helped to have this greater purpose, a very simple task at hand to focus on. 94% of volunteers say that it improves their mood. 76% say that it makes them feel healthier. 80% of volunteers say that volunteering enables them to have better control over their mental health. These percentages are really high and really positive. When I was just starting out in tech writing, I felt like I should be spending my time improving my craft, making career-related progress. Even as I worked on my job skills on my free time after work, I kept trying to fill this hole in my life that I couldn't quite put my finger on. I didn't really understand it. Then I heard about this local nonprofit, Keep Austin Fed. They rescue food that would normally be thrown out by restaurants and grocery stores, and they redistribute it to organizations and people in need. So helping people who need the most basic of things, like food, that was really something I could get behind, an idea that I really latched onto. Interacting with the devoted staff and volunteers there gave me a whole new view on volunteering in the nonprofit world. I suddenly had a cause to support that I felt really good about, and it was outside of my normal everyday sphere. So it gave me that vacation from work that I really needed. So volunteering to serve my community every week began to help me combat the stress and burnout I was feeling at work. I started shelving those worrisome thoughts earlier, and instead started looking forward to walking the dogs at Austin Pets Alive or facilitating a social meetup with my local Write the Docs meetup group. It really helped me set the really crappy stuff that I was feeling about work aside, which is super important. When we get stuck in that routine of our everyday jobs and life, it can feel like nothing we're doing really makes an impact. What are we working towards? Does what we do even matter? And for me, nothing cures that feeling more than volunteering for someone or something like a dog or a cat that needs you. You can immediately see the impact you're making on those you help. It changes your stress-addled brain by increasing activity in the structures of the brain that create pleasure, while decreasing activity in regions of the brain responsible for stress. I mean, how's that for a heck of a 1-2 punch? Being a regular volunteer doesn't require you to commit enormous amounts of time every week or even month. Start small. There are multitudes of daily, weekly, and even monthly volunteer opportunities like working with ESL learners, carrying and cuddling cats at the shelter, or just taking care of your neighborhood parks and spaces. So instead of stewing on work, compounding your rising stress levels, take time out to get involved with a cause that speaks your language, that you're interested in, you feel passionate about. So getting going with a volunteer org is usually pretty easy. After you consider the factors, you do some soul searching, you pick an organization or 3 that you're interested in, it's time to sign up. Typically, you can express interest via their website or by sending them an email. Based on what you learn, decide which opportunity may be best fit for you. You'll likely go through an info session or a training before being unleashed into the volunteer world. So start volunteering, then keep volunteering.